Hello, how's it going? Um, Let me just get started here. I'm using Zoom to record, so okay, this should work out. I'll set a timer so I don't go too far over. So what my little study about is a real fostered self-efficacy as a mediating variable between gender and mental rotation task ability. So here's my abstract, just what I'm talking about. In mental rotation tasks, men tend to outperform women. This is kind of just at a baseline level, what the research has shown for the longest time. But this performance disparity has been found to be a result of a person's confidence in their spatial abilities. Okay, so it's really confidence at play at why the men were doing better at the mental rotation task. So this okay, and Estes and Felkner they're the ones who did this research, and it was over finding this mediating variable of confidence. So, okay, mine is self-efficacy, which there isn't a huge distinction there, but I will go into it. Um, they did some analyses that weren't causal, and then in their final experiment, they tried to attribute causality. And the way they did that was they had the women, they had them do a line judgment task, so another spatial task. Um, Let me say, like, if this line is longer, is the second line longer, shorter, or the same? And they told them after they completed it that they did very well on the task, and they assessed their confidence ability at spatial tasks. So where I think that kind of falls flat, or at least where that can be improved upon, is how could we make the confidence real? Okay, so that confidence in that condition is just a lie for experimental purposes, but I wondered if we could foster self-efficacy and make the confidence real. Um, so that's how they did it in their final experiment. So in the present study, previous empirically valid methods of increasing self-efficacy were used to allow the women to overcome their low self-efficacy. On average, it was lower than men's. I say it's brought on by societal gender bias. So that's that's kind of the guiding theory as to why is this? How come? Why would the women have low self-efficacy in the first place? What's the reason? So, it comes from societal bias, norms, and so on. So, let me talk about mental rotation for a little bit. When an object is shown at a different orientation again in a two-dimensional space, so it's a three-dimensional object, as it's assumed to be three-dimensional because the way I'll show you what I'm talking about, right? It's these right here. So you're supposed to interpret a 3D object, even though it's not really 3D. Okay, so it's still interpreted as the same object. So the speed in which one makes this realization, so if they see a second object that's the same, but it's just been rotated. You talked about a depth rotation, primarily being the most difficult to recognize. Um, yeah, the speed in which they do that and the accuracy in which a person does that varies. So that's my dependent variable here. Reaction time of recognizing rotation varies increasingly with how much the object is rotated. So the more degrees that the object is rotated, if you remember from class, that people move it in their minds, right? And it takes time to move that mental image. So the more they have to move it, the longer it takes. Even though it's not constricted to the laws of physics, that's the way we think, though. It makes more sense, so we do it that way. So the brain region primarily used is, okay, here's a picture of the parietal lobe, familiar with, and it's responsible for the spatial skills and most of the mental rotation going on. So I'll talk about self-efficacy, and I base my self-efficacy, well, it's from Bander's research in 1977, but I found Betts and Schifano did a really specific experiment on college-age women where they raised their self-efficacy, and the context was about being in the field of STEM, and getting them more comfortable and accepting of their potential abilities that could be in that field, even though, you know, a lot of or punishment and reinforcement and shaping over the years might disagree with that, possibly. So the participants in this study, they were giving a building, repairing, and construction, these kinds of activities. And the intervention utilized all four methods of increasing self-efficacy from Bandura's research. Right now I'm setting Betts and Schifano. So they had these women do these different activities that were very spatial in nature. And these are four modes that or factors that determine somebody's self-efficacy. So vicarious experience, anxiety regulation, social support, and accomplishment. So they attacked all of from all those angles to increase their self-efficacy. Here's a model of self-efficacy, and I mean, because I couldn't really find an operational definition of confidence as it relates to self-efficacy, I want to believe that confidence is taking into account self-efficacy and outcome expectancy. So if you know you're going to win, so you know you have the ability to win, and you know you're going to win or something, right? Whereas self-efficacy is just, you know, you have the ability. And self-efficacy comes from a lot of research in therapeutic outcomes. So it's a good predictor of behavioral change because people think they can change. It's not an outcome expectancy, whereas they think whether they think they'll get better or not, because that puts faith in external factors. So I think self-efficacy is more powerful. That's why I want to use that in here. So I have a gripe though, because Betts and Schifano would interchangeably use confidence and self-efficacy as they were defining it equivalently. They just interchangeably used those effects, or excuse me, those constructs. So my methodology is before and after, pre-post design between men and women. And the dependent variable is the mental rotation task. And they take a before and after. The before and after the intervention. So the intervention is based on Betts and Schifano. It's a self-efficacy building exercise. I don't know if I put too much thought into this and got too nitpicky, but what I ended up with is 24 men, 24 women. They go to a workshop. We have them do a workshop where they learn to make a model. So I'll say these are UCO students. They make a model. They construct one of Old North, just a relatively simple model, so everyone can do it if they're taught how to do it, is the idea. And the men and women get paired into groups of two, and there are four instructors. Two of them are men, two of them are women. Okay, so this is supposed to be an exercise to where if the men and women work together in these dyad groups, they should be able to, I guess, relate to each other and then understand that it's supposed to dissolve that gender bias. So there's a distinction between mine and Betts and Schifano, because Betts and Schifano had a group of women just by themselves. So this is, but you know, that was back in 2000 and it's 2020, and we're very used to working with the opposite sex nowadays. So especially in group projects. So these are going to be like college-age people, college freshmen, and my what's it called? Dang it. Intervention, sorry, attacks all four of these. So for vicarious experience, the women see the female instructors making the objects and showing everybody how to make the models. So they vicariously see someone else doing that, so they can do it, so they think they can do it themselves. Anxiety regulation, there's a component in my study where they have yoga and water breaks. So regulation of anxiety. Whether there would be any anxiety, I don't know. But they used anxiety regulation. They used a relaxation method in Betts and Schifano, so I'll replicate that. Um, because using all four of these components is supposed to have the most powerful effect on self-efficacy. So social support, the instructors are supportive, and they kind of prompt, not really prompt, but shape the different groups to be supportive of each other, and then fosters just that kind of supportive relationship. And then I think the most powerful one is accomplishment, but that's the hardest one to manipulate. So to get a sense of accomplishment, they have to, okay, I'm getting pretty far on time. To get a sense of accomplishment, they they get reinforcement that they're building the model correctly, the model of Old North correctly. That's my methodology. And then here's my proposed effect. This is a really simplified, and these numbers are arbitrary. So all I'm basically saying, I mean, here's a table and a graph, whichever one's easier for you, that the women should go up to a normal mental rotation, or normal, an equivalent mental rotation ability to the men after the treatment. And the men, I expect, will stay the same. Could go down. They could meet in the middle. If the men get humbled or something, that could always happen. So this is it's a mediation model. It's kind of not what you're used to. I mean, you're used to a regression mediation model, probably, because they're better. But since this is an experiment, I just have the pre and post, and what's happening here, right, is the difference. Once the effect of confidence is erased, once it's erased in the post condition, the mental rotation ability meets, they become equivalent. I want to compare that really quickly to this. So this is an analysis of covariance that they use, but this shows, this is going to be a little more like useful though graphically. But you can see here that the lines, males and females, they intersect. So they intersect. They reach an equivalent mental rotation ability on the task whenever the confidence is at 5. So whenever they have an average amount of confidence, both the men and women tend to perform equally. So you'll notice here, when confidence really goes up, men have diminishing returns, and females here, yeah, see females start out, this regression line goes way out further to the low confidence end. So that's what we're trying to, there's some more literature review, but that's what we're trying to erase. We're trying to erase that effect. And the last thing is just the discussion, right? So discussion, limitations, other possible results. So some other possibilities of mediators could be considered for gender effects. Man, I mean, because this is such a fundamental one that we talk about: verbal, spatial, men and women. I know this is just spatial, but verbal's another big one. And it makes me wonder, what are the implications if there's these arbitrary socially, influenced mediators that have nothing to do with actual ability, verbal ability, spatial ability, right? Maybe it's just society, man. Seriously though. But that's what I mean. So different, where we see this, definitely see this in like car insurance costs. Men pay more for car insurance because they are in more deadly accidents, and they total cars, and healthcare after a crash and things like that. But it makes you wonder, like, the general theory is testosterone levels and high risk behavior. But doing research like this, it'd be very interesting to think what other factors could be going into that, and whether it's kind of like an epistemogeny interaction going on, right? So intelligence testing, this is controversial, but the GRE is kind of an intelligence test, and you know how it's separated between spatial, math, kind of hand in hand, and verbal ability on top of writing ability. And you just wonder the gender differences there. Does that have to do with confidence? Does that have to do with prescribed beliefs of what we're capable of as men and women in general? And of course, implications like women in STEM. How could there be more women in STEM? Why aren't there more men in liberal arts? And what I want to get at there is 15 minutes. Preference versus aptitude. How much of all of this is ascribed to men are just interested in STEM more, or women are just interested in liberal arts more, and it doesn't have to do with aptitude, or it doesn't have to do with societal effects. And of course, other possible results. So if I got a null result, I'd wonder possibly, is self-efficacy not enough? So do we need the component of outcome expectancy as well to truly erase the effect? Because I'm attacking self-efficacy primarily, trying to manipulate that. Okay, well, that's all. So all my sources are in my paper. So thank you very much for watching. I get stop share, pause record.